I even had a professor before tests who would say, don't be nervous. This is an opportunity to show you're learning. And it's so funny because I use that bullshit still with my clients. And I'm like, going to the grocery store because you're scared of it. That's an opportunity for you to really prove to yourself. And they're like rolling their eyes.
I love it. And I love the tone of your voice when you said that.
Welcome to the Invigor Medical Podcast, where we sit down with medical professionals and discuss a full spectrum of health-related subjects. It all starts in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Invigor Medical Podcast. I am ridiculously excited about this episode. This is something that I could nerd out on about for a very long time. And we basically almost recorded an episode before we even started here today, if that gives you any idea. I'm here with my lovely co-host, Derek. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for being here as well.
And also we're joined by Keilani Perisian-Mason, who is a mental health expert, therapist, and host of the podcast, Delightfully Dysfunctional. Love that name, by the way. It's so perfect.
I know. I feel so at home here.
I wonder what it could be. With over a decade of experience, Keilani focuses on providing holistic, evidence-based counseling to help individuals navigate stress, mental health, and relationships. Keilani, I'm so excited that you're here today. Thank you for being with us.
To be here.
So, tell us a little bit about how you got here. You have experience and years working as a therapist, and now you're doing a podcast and you're excited about all of these different things. So give us a little bit of an overview of what brought Keilani here to this chair today.
I feel like it was a windy road for a while there, but what brought Keilani to this chair today? I love people. I love understanding people. I've always loved that. I've always been very curious about why people think or do the things they do or the things they believe. And so my hunger for wanting to learn more about that started when I was young and probably middle school, high school. I remember reading Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. And there's books that are profound and have depth. I was craving at a young age. And I just loved understanding how the human spirit can persevere through hardship. And I wanted to be a part of that. And then I feel like this show, I don't know if there's a soul on the planet that has ever heard of it, but when I was a kid, there was a show called Starting Over, and it was like counseling summer camp for adults.
Oh my gosh. Yes. I kind of want to watch it now, honestly.
Oh my gosh, right? You should totally find it. And so I feel like it was probably 40-year-old housewives were watching it and me. And I would just eat it up. And then they'd have these big, cathartic breakthroughs. And I'd be like, I want to do that. And so there were these little sparks. But yeah, once I got into school, it was clear that this was the direction that I was going and what I wanted to do. But the podcast had been an idea on my mind for quite some time. And it was kind of a lot of serendipity happened last year for it to come to fruition. So it feels really exciting.
That's super exciting. And I mean, I know how passionate we are here at Invigor Medical on helping people be educated and taking care of their health and longevity and aging with some amount of fitness and ability and really just overall happiness and joy. Yeah. And so I'm really excited for our conversation today and was actually listening to your podcast on my drive over, The Body and the Brain, because we talk so much about physical well-being here on Invigor Medical. And I mean, we tie it into mental health as well. But I'm really excited for this conversation so we can kind of dive into that a little bit more in the way the body and the brain work together and how to best take care of ourselves. I mean, what are you really excited about for in this conversation?
You know what I'm really excited about? I was watching a couple of your episodes as well, and I just love how accessible you make mental health and how you make it fun, which is a lot of times when people talk about mental health, they're like, it's either a chore or something that's scary or
a downer.
Yeah, exactly. All these different things. And I love the tone that you bring to the podcast.
Thank you. That's really what I wanted. So that feels really good to hear. Yeah. In my counseling sessions, there's a lot of laughter, actually.
That's great.
It's not all sadness and down and depressive moments. There's a lot of laughter and connection. And that's what I wanted to bring to the podcast too.
That's awesome. The thing that I'm really excited about, and the reason why I honed in, the first episode I watched was The Body and the Mind that you guys did, because there's this whole idea of you have your mind and your body, and they're two kind of different things. But really, it's what is your
we're one organism.
Yeah, it's one organism.
One
it's all connected.
creature.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, that's kind of my mantra. It almost feels like silly when I think about that concept of being so separate, but that's how society has kind of trained us. That's how the medical system has trained us thus far. So I can't be too harsh. I think that it seems really clear that the things that we do with our body can affect our brain. And I want to talk about some specifics and the way that it goes both ways. For example, we don't always think about how many of the top killers really and diseases are all stress related. It's all chronic stress related. And we think about obesity, heart disease, blood pressure, all these things. It is so related to the amount of stress and adrenaline and cortisol that are coursing through your body if you are in a chronic state. So that idea maybe of previous generations, and certainly in our generation too, but of like, go, 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 hustle, like mind over matter. Yeah. I think that we're realizing in this time that there's another way to be. Because if you do that, you end up with all of these chronic stress illnesses.
So that being said, you're talking about how in our modern day and age, it's just go, go, go. Do you think that mental health is becoming a bigger issue as time has gone on? Like, I don't know the numbers, and you might. Like in the last 50 years, I'm pretty sure mental illness has kind of like gone up. Is that a factor of like there actually being more problems, or are we just more observant and more aware of the different things that are going on?
Yes.
Yes, all the way around.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's both. I think with anything, when there's more awareness, people are able to identify easier, and that's a great thing. That's a great thing that people can do that. I also think that we are living in the loneliest time that humans have been alive, and connection is a part of being human. We are social primates. We are meant to be social. That's how we've thrived. That's how we have survived as a species, is in community. Yeah. And we don't have that access to community, and it can't be replaced with a smartphone and social media. So I am concerned. I think there's too many social experiments happening on humans right now, and we need to kind of come back to basics. Yeah. I think that is a really important thing. And for people to understand this brain-body connection, when we're having a lot of stress and anxiety in our life, I tell a lot of my clients, you need to remember that you're kind of just a fancy plant. There's a certain ingredients that you need no matter what. Right. Like go outside and get some sunlight, take a walk. Have you drank enough water today? Like there are certain basics that we need. Yeah. And I think, again, that's an area that people forget. And we might not think that getting enough water or going on a walk or having the right nutrients is something that affects mental health, but it really does. And then when it comes to stress and anxiety, like in the Brain and the Body episode, I talked a lot about the nervous system. So we can go into that a little bit.
I think I would love to.
That's what I geek out about.
Yeah, for sure. And explaining, I think, the difference to people between, because they've probably heard it before, but once you it takes a lot of learning before it starts to stick with you. But let's start with what is the difference between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system and what they do in the body.
Yeah. I think the easiest way I like to think of the sympathetic nervous system is the gas. And that internal alarm of hyperarousal. So it's on edge. It's going to be like, Mayday, right? It's going to be so quick to go there. And then our parasympathetic nervous system is the brake, and it's trying to maintain energy and conserve energy. It's trying to calm us. So when we're in that diffuse sympathetic arousal, is when our sympathetic nervous system is in that hyperarousal freak out state. Right. Yeah. And I think we've all been there at some point. We might notice flushing skin, sweating, shaking. We might feel tense. There's all these different symptoms of what's happening in that moment. Increased heart rate is definitely one of them. So when your heart rate gets to 100 beats per minute, that's what John Gottman would call flooded, or being in diffuse sympathetic arousal. I'll probably use the term flooded because that's what I use with my therapy clients. Yeah. It's easier to pronounce.
And relatable, at least for me. Very relatable.
Thank you.
A term I use even with my 11-year-old when she's in a freak out mode, and I'm like, hey, you're very flooded right now. Like maybe we just need to take a breath because this conversation isn't helping or going anywhere. We have to like get into calm. Yeah.
Exactly. And so it's the recognizing that, and then what can I do to help my body calm down? Because in that moment, it's actually, there's so many things going on. Let's use an example of, let's say that there was someone who was in a really traumatic relationship and now they're starting a new relationship and they are feeling, they got triggered. Maybe it was just simply their partner is in a bad mood, but when someone was in a bad mood before, shit went down.
Yeah.
And it got scary.
That meant it was
now
about
her
to be
hippocampus,
dangerous.
that is her storage cabinet of her brain, it's very close to her amygdala, which is where that freak out part of our brain is, that is going to be flooded. And so, especially with post-traumatic stress types of situations or chronic stress, it's going to trigger that freak out even faster. So when we go into that flooded state to calm our brain, we really need to take some deep breaths, because all of the blood in our body is actually going to different places to protect our internal organs. Cortisol is being dumped into our gut, which is where it's produced. You might even have a stomach ache. Your heart rate is going up. The blood in your brain is not going to the good thinking and the communication skills. It's going to the survival mode.
Yeah.
You are no longer able to communicate, to think clearly, to grasp and understand what someone is really telling you. And we have to calm down. So it's either through deep breathing, I think going outside, I think taking a cold shower, splashing cold, like temperature, thinking about like sensory things. I like to use a lot of mindfulness, and that really incorporates what are you seeing, thinking, smelling, like kind of remind yourself and shock your nervous system out of that state.
Yeah.
Or calm yourself, do something completely unrelated to whatever is irritating you. Go garden, go pet your dog.
Well, and of course, we're talking about an intense example of, maybe someone who had some abuse or something in the past and they're triggered in that way. But the truth is that even something that's, I guess, not to put a qualifier on it, but a lesser trigger where even just you're walking through your day and I'll just notice sometimes I get it right in my chest and I realize I'm feeling anxious and I don't even know why. And sometimes it's because things have built up and my body has just held all this energy that I haven't released. And so especially during shutdown in 2020, between quarantine and all the social political things that were going on, and getting on my social media and finding people that I loved saying things that just hurt my heart. And, and there's so much unknown. And I just found myself, I turn it off and I go away, but then I still felt that feeling in my chest. And so I made a list of things that I could do that would reground me and get me back to center, and watching the sunset was one of those. I made a specific playlist of music that helps me because I'm in my head all the time. So getting into my body, because that's where the alarm was really happening. Yeah. The alarm was happening in my body, and then it was just going to my brain, and my brain's like, whoa, okay, something's going on, guys. We better protect, right? Like you said, all the blood going everywhere else. So to get into my body, I had a playlist that would do that, or exercise, go for a walk. I learned breathing at that time, but since then, I know some people call it box breathing. I tend to do the 4-7-8, which is the inhale for 4, hold for 7, and exhale for 8 slowly. And now I've even started doing my exhale with a hum because of how they say humming or singing stimulates the vagus nerve, which gets you into the parasympathetic. So all of those things. And I think that's what you're saying, right? Is like finding the ways to get out of the flood.
And the flood that you're describing too, I think that's what I mean by chronic stress. It's that all of the things going on in our life, it is the petri dish of society and the life that we've created that we've thought is normal is actually molding over and you're feeling flooded. Right. And so you've got to figure out how to clean it up. Right. And I think that you came up with a really good plan. I love those ideas and the different breathing exercises that you've been practicing. I noticed a lot of I'm unintentionally taking too shallow breaths and I'm really trying to be aware of that. And I'm doing Andrew Huberman's double breath and really liking it.
Side. Yeah.
And
I love that.
I just heard that like a week or two ago and I did it and it was incredible.
You can feel it. Like it's hitting the parts of your lungs that maybe don't always.
Do you know
those
what
capillaries are
right, but do you know what it made me think of?
Yeah.
It made me think of when you've had a really good cry and that hiccup sob.
Well, that is actually, he talked about that. And that is a part of naturally that we see babies do as a way to calm down, to get extra breath.
That's
so it is
crazy.
mimicking that.
Right.
It's
and that's what it made me think of, because like I said, I don't cry very much, but like there's sometimes I'm like, God, I wish I could just get this cry out, because it's so cathartic and so releasing to be able to do that. And so it was wild as I was doing that. I was like, oh my gosh, I can actually kind of synthesize this.
You know, it's our body's natural ability to process emotion. And we so often try to clog the dam and plug it. Suck it up. Right? Like when people are in my office and they're feeling that way and they're saying sorry, I'm like, please, you have nothing to feel. This is beautiful. Like this is exactly where you need to be. Do not say sorry to me. I'm good.
Yeah. Do you see it as strength? And so often
I just think it's being human. Like you're being human. Your eyes leak when you're sad.
Right.
Yeah, that's what it happens.
Yes.
Yeah.
Isn't that wild though, how kind of deeply embedded that is in our society? Because even my son, who's 7, and as someone who has always really tried to make space for my kids to have their feelings, you know, he still has gotten to this point, and I don't know what happened, if some, you know, a kid made fun of him, or he didn't feel he was in a safe place to just have his emotion. But now he's gotten to this point where if he gets really upset, he doesn't want to be seen. He hides his face. He doesn't even come to me for a hug when he's fallen down outside if anybody else is around. It needs to be very private for him. And it almost kind of breaks my heart, because I'm like, it's so embedded in our society, or maybe it's biological. I don't know. Maybe you can speak to that, where it's like because we feel vulnerable in that state, it's natural to kind of recluse and pull away and want to be in protection whenever we're feeling that way.
How old is he?
7.
I'd have to know him to know. I got to look under the hood to know more. But I think there's a social phase that he's entering and continues until high school. It's more so middle school and high school, but I still think it starts in elementary of where you're looking to your peers for feedback. And part of it is that social construct of us being in a tribe that gives you information on, if I'm accepted here, that means I have a place in the tribe and I'm safe. Or if there's a correction, that means I need to correct something so that I can feel safe in this tribe and I can, survive with them in community. And even though that isn't the dynamic, it's not like there's elementary tribes and they're foraging for food, right? That's not the dynamic of what happens now. That'd be kind of cool, actually.
It would be, honestly.
So
I kind of want tribe life sometimes.
It still is just, it's a part of that reptilian part of our brain, is how it's phrased sometimes, or just there's that biological aspect where, they are turning towards what their social group is telling them. And that might be part of it. And what's sad is that I think it's getting better and better, but for a lot of little boys throughout time, it's been something that has been beaten out of them to not have emotional intelligence or to be in touch with their emotions. And I think that we're getting better at that, about just teaching overall how to have that acceptance for it and talk about it.
Well, I'm glad that we're talking about it. I think that's one of the reasons that I so enjoy listening to podcasts like yours and others and having these conversations in general with friends, is because I just want more people to start having the conversation, you know, and to experience so much of the safety that I've experienced by learning comfortability in being able to go there. And it's still, it still takes work. Like, right? I think, vulnerability is a really difficult thing for most of us. And I think there's different layers of it, right? There's the vulnerabilities that are practiced, and it's not, you're still showing something, but really true vulnerability, I think, almost always costs you something. And
you really need to be sure of who you're being vulnerable with.
Safety.
And are they able to, like, in therapy terms, we would say hold space for someone or be a holding container for them, which means whatever comes up for you, I can be present to your pain. I can be present to the depths of what you're going through, and I don't need to tap out. And there are a lot of people where when I've tried to share something deep,
right, it's just too much.
I'm done.
Yeah.
Oh, so what's the weather like? And that is a rejection. That feels painful. When you're being vulnerable with someone, you're like ripping your heart out and giving them this gift and saying, please be precious with it. And if someone is either harsh or dismissive, we get the message that it doesn't matter. I'm not going to do that again.
Right.
Obviously, that was, we just lock up and the walls come up. So yeah, being vulnerable is powerful. And I think you do need to be tactful.
Yeah.
Speaking on that, can you maybe give some tactics or like some things that people can think of? Like, okay, someone is trying to be vulnerable with me. Because a big part of what we do here at Invigor Medical is actually like sexual health, right? Trying to help people with various issues and things, including like libido, erectile dysfunction, those kind of things.
So should we say like it's a partner that they're trying to be vulnerable with their partner?
And so I'm thinking kind of in that context, like if someone, because that's probably the most vulnerable any one of us is with anybody at any time, because it makes sense because you're with your partner. But in situations like that, and someone is really trying to be vulnerable, like I guess I'm trying to think of what the right question here is. If like, what's the connection between vulnerability and I guess sexuality?
Well, intimacy, when you break it down into me, see, I think so like you see me, I want to be seen by you. And when you can have that kind of connection with someone, I think it exponentially makes the sex better, right? Like I can be fully vulnerable. I can feel free in this space.
Yeah.
So if you don't have that intimacy, which requires vulnerability and the ability to be present and respond in an appropriate, loving, caring, compassionate way, I don't think, I guess I can speak more so to a woman's perspective, that you're going to be able to be as fully present in the moment for that experience. It's not going to be as enjoyable.
Yeah.
So intimacy and foreplay starts far outside of the bedroom.
Right.
I think it takes, it's the foundational pieces. I use a lot of John Gottman's work. I'm getting Gottman certified. I also this weekend, I have my intentional love workshop, and it's based on Gottman's work in the 7 principles of making marriage work. And so he talks about the foundation being friendship, of really knowing your partner, and that being then able to have the next floor of like sharing fondness and admiration and appreciation, having a positive perspective towards your partner, and just like, and on to be able to solve problems and have shared meaning at the top. But like any home, if the foundation has cracks or wasn't poured correctly, doors don't shut, windows don't close, things are rolling down the floor.
Yeah.
So even like your question about sex and intimacy, I still think it's this foundation of like, do you know your partner? Can you see them in a positive perspective? Do you really feel like you understand them? Or are you the CEOs of your home and you are talking about who's picking up who and who's getting the groceries? That's not intimate conversation. Yeah. Are you just sitting at home in the evenings watching television but not talking? That's not intimate conversation. So I think that there are some pieces that get missed, and then we wonder why the house doesn't work.
Right.
And when it comes to sex and having good sex, I think that's a big piece that gets missed. You can't just snap your fingers after you haven't cultivated and put in the time to your relationship to have that intimacy and expect it to happen when you want your clothes to come off.
Right. Well, and if you're experiencing something like erectile dysfunction or any other kind of insecurities about your body, or maybe an inability to orgasm or all of that, like being vulnerable enough to have that conversation with your partner and to feel like they're going to meet you and not reject you. I mean, I think especially, I think it is for men and women though. Like if men are experiencing erectile dysfunction, that feels like a massive failure. Yeah. But simultaneously as a woman, if you're feeling like you can't climax, you also feel like a failure. Like you couldn't show up in that space.
Or I like not just knowing how to be free with yourself too, I think for men and women. And to be quite honest, I've moved in different places in the country. This particular area that we live in, the purity culture that happened in this area, I think has really affected the adults that are around now and their ability to have, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to make a generalization like healthy sex lives. I think that there's some areas that they've gotten stuck on, like, and that makes a lot of sense. Here in this whole little community, there was kind of a shaming of a natural biological process that you're it's normal to have urges. It's normal to have those thoughts. And obviously we want to be considerate and ethical and everything. But it's funny to me. we want to say, no, don't do that. Don't think about sex. Sex is bad, except, oh, now you're married.
And now you flip the switch.
Now you're just supposed to figure it out and it's supposed to be good.
Because I was raised in the purity culture, you know, very, very much so. And like, no, that's something that's specifically for inside of marriage. Like I had a betrothal ceremony before I got married.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
See, that's what I'm talking about.
And so then it's like getting into marriage and I'm like,
how do you flip the switch like that? And so this is like a layer that I think is really great to talk about. I'm so glad you brought up sex, actually. I love talking about sex. I think that it should be talked about a lot more. I said in one of the episodes of our podcast, but I'll say it again because it's funny. My maiden name is actually Coochie. And so I always was like,
oh my gosh,
Dr. Coochie, sex therapist.
I love it.
The marketing does itself,
oh my gosh. I feel a spin-off podcast that's coming, you know, that will be that.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
It'd be so much fun.
Why not? Like, go for it. I would listen. 100%.
Did anyone ever, when I was a kid, there's this old lady, Dr. Sue, on, I don't know what it was, like E maybe. And she had like a desk and she would just talk about sex toys.
Oh my gosh.
And she would just like, she'd bring up a bag and be like, look what we've got today. Now let me tell. And she would talk about the anatomy and it would be super like educational, but she's saying it like it's nothing. Like
no
this is
big
going to tickle the clitoris. Yeah, that'll feel nice, right? Like it's but it's just old. Yes, please. It's got to be somewhere. Oh, it was so fun. I actually wrote to her and she came to my university when I was in college.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, Dr. Sue.
And you got to have her as a guest on the podcast now,
I
right?
think she's
like,
kicked the bucket.
Oh
Rest in peace,
man.
Dr. Sue.
What a national treasure. Thank you for your service to our society, Dr. Sue.
I recently have found a couple shows that I really like and I highly recommend to the couples that I work with. Oh gosh, there's one on Netflix, How to Build a Sex Room.
I love it. I say it's like 50 Shades of Grey met HGTV.
Yeah, that's good.
I love it. It's really, without, you know, it is like on cable television. It's not like, it's not like X-rated.
And then there's Good Sex, which I can't remember what network it's on actually, but someone should look it up and let us know.
Good Sex. We'll put it in the show notes.
Yes, yeah. But because and then to have conversations with your partner, like in the How to Build a Sex Room. Well, would you like that? Oh, okay. I could see that because they have a real variety. It's not like the name of the show sounds salacious, but there are a lot of very like mild-mannered people who just want a cozy space or a welcoming space. And I think it's really, instead of talking about, oh, me and you and what's going on, now it's a little bit farther removed and easier to talk about sex or to talk about what's going on with this couple on TV and your thoughts on it.
Yeah.
But it opens the door to the conversation.
Yes.
And I think that can feel like a very heavy fireproof door sometimes. And it cracks it open.
Yeah. I think that's why I even love shows like Ted Lasso. Because and in a similar way with, you know, his dealing with like panic attacks and anxiety or what other people are dealing with, it's like you're watching, you know, a show that's meant for entertainment, but at the same time, it's like, oh, he's going through that. And I've gone through something like that. And now I'm sitting watching this with my partner or my friend. And maybe now it's safe for me to say, you know, I had a panic attack a couple months ago and I didn't tell anyone because I felt shameful about it and I didn't know what to do, you know, and just, you know, so whether the Good Sex or Ted Lasso or whatever, it's just like opening that door to be able to have the conversation.
I think people are craving relatability, vulnerability, and humanness. And that's what these different shows, the common theme is like, wanting to have good sex and an intimate relationship with someone you care about. I think that that's a large part about being human. Yeah. Learning how to manage your emotions, and you can be a highly functional human and still have anxiety or still have the occasional panic attack. Let's figure that out. Let's talk about that. That is an experience of being human. We should be able to talk about it.
So there's this meme that I absolutely love, and I think that you'll probably enjoy it as well, where it's like, it's this concept of like when you go to therapy, you've got all these thoughts in your head. And part of the way that we process it is by actually talking about it, by creating a narrative around, okay, these are the events that happened. And this is, so the meme is like, I've got brain spaghetti and I need someone to eat my brain spaghetti. And it's like, there's like noodles coming out the guy's mouth, and the other side it's like, it's like it's not like graphic. It's just like,
I've seen it with like a ball of yarn, but I wasn't expecting the spaghetti. That's funny.
So that being said, let's say we're kind of diving into it. Like, let's say someone needs someone to talk to. They don't necessarily feel comfortable talking to their partner, or they're in a situation where they can't get therapy. What are some good ways for them to get their brain spaghetti out?
So did you say they're not in a position to get therapy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that journaling is a great way to access your subconscious, and a lot of people struggle with that. Like, it needs to be like, dear journal, and I think I used to feel like, well, is someone going to read this? Do I need to write about my day? And I want you to throw that concept out. Yeah. That's malarkey. This is only for you. You can burn it after. It doesn't matter.
Yes, which is actually also very therapeutic, I feel, to burn it after. And doesn't Brene Brown call it your shitty first draft? Like, nobody needs to read it. Like, because I'll get in the same headspace because I think I get in this perfectionism thing. And also because I am a creative and I enjoy writing. And so I'll start writing, and then I'm like, I just like stop and I think about it for way too long instead of just like bleh on the page.
Each person is different. You know? Like, Zach has volumes of journals that he's written over the years. That's my husband. And I write in a journal and I do throw it away. Like, I need to throw it away. This wasn't meant for anyone's eyes. This was my messy, just where I had to get it all out. It wasn't for the purpose of someone reading it. It was for me.
So can we talk a little bit about, like, why does journaling work? Is it like the somatic and like actually getting the thoughts out of your brain and like moving the hand to make the letters? Or
in the brain spaghetti.
I'm getting hungry now, and that's weird. That's just weird, but I am.
Right. In the brain spaghetti, it's like your thoughts, your intentions, your goal. It's all just tangled up, and it can feel so exhausting. And it's usually wrapped up in a lot of dysfunctional thoughts of, I have to be perfect, or there's catastrophizing thoughts, or you are not acknowledging the good things. You're only noticing the bad things. So when you can actually start journaling, and it might sound like this, I've been really stressed lately. Here's all the things that have been stressing me out. Sometimes for me, it's a bullet point kind of a journal. Here's all the things stressing me out. Well, what's in my control there? What's temporary? Like, let me put it in perspective. It's not like this is all crushing down on me and it's always going to be that way. This is temporary. Well, this is an area that I have some control in. Maybe I could do this or this differently. Like, you can kind of map it out better. So I would say start with brain dumping what is stressing you out, what's in your control and out of your control. Are there areas where your perception might be able to shift and change? Are there habits that need to change? Sometimes that's more of an action-oriented way that you could journal, but I think for me, it's a conversation with the part of myself that's being real and not bullshitting me. Yeah. That's what I like about journaling. Like, yeah, you have been doing that. Damn.
So I love listening to Mel Robbins' podcast, and she had this episode some months ago where she had, I think it was one of her producers, it's such a friend, come on, talk about this writing exercise. And they literally did it on the podcast where they just started writing. But the prompt that she started was, that they all started with was, what if it could be easy? And it was interesting because they all kind of like didn't even really stay there. But I think a lot of people, when they sit down, it's like, where do you start? Yeah. So even something like that, where it's like, that's not what they wrote about for 3 pages, but it was enough to get the pen moving.
Yeah. I'm actually working on creating a journal that will be available because I feel that I have so many people who have said that. And there's no, the other thing is that there's so much perfectionism. There's no wrong way or right
or wrong way. Right. Yeah. To be able to just let go of
your
that.
Way. Yeah. If your journaling means that you're going to paint a picture and you're thinking and it's an art journal, cool. If your journaling means that it's that bullet point or it's part of some kind of a tracking, like there's really cool mood journals where you can like identify, this is what I'm feeling today. And then kind of, these are the habits that I was able to do. So if you want something that's more specifically focused, that's still a great way to have accountability and have more awareness of yourself and your habits. So the journaling is a goal of having more awareness of self and habits. Podcasts, I think, listening to podcasts that are aligned with the areas you might be struggling with. That's a great way to have some deeper insight. I like honestly curating your Instagram and your social media appropriately, really doing a purge of the things that spark comparison or negativity for you.
I don't think that could be overstated, by the way.
It really can't. Like, snooze the people you don't want to see, hide them, like curate what you want to pull up. So when I was going through a really toxic, unhealthy relationship, I flooded my Instagram with things about codependency and healing from codependency. And it was like a nice little Post-it note. If I pulled out my phone and I saw it, it was like, yes, thank you. Keep me on track. I needed that reminder. Or I'm going to hang on to that today. And sometimes those are the little affirmations, reminders of what's really important that help you get through the next 30 minutes of the day.
Are you familiar with Mel Robbins at all? Do you know the high five habit?
No, tell me.
Okay, so this is something I was thinking of. You're saying that people can't like have, they don't really have access to therapy or like partner that they're really communicating with. So she started, it's actually her most recent book, The High Five Habit, which if you're not familiar with Mel Robbins, she's one of the most booked public speakers in the world, motivation, all of that. But she's also very practical and does a lot of science-based research. Well, she uses science-based research and to the things that she helps people apply in their life in order to work through things like anxiety, which she also calls alarm. And she has, psychotherapists.
Transferring it to excitement. Is that the same one who's like, oh, you can take anxiety and transform it to excitement? It's all about the valence of what you.
She has had someone on the podcast who talked a bit about how anxiety and excitement feel the same in the body.
Yeah.
It's two sides of the same coin. Right. Thinking about standing in line for a roller coaster or right before a performance that you're about to give, it's a bit of both. And if you can channel the excitement. I even had a professor before tests who would say, don't be nervous. This is an opportunity to show you're learning. And it's so funny because I use that bullshit still with my clients. And I'm like, going to the grocery store because you're scared of it, that's an opportunity for you to really prove to yourself. And they're like rolling their eyes.
I love it. And I love the tone of your voice when you said that. But no, the high five habit is something that she started to do when she was, she'd gone through already in her story, working through massive anxiety, crippling anxiety, struggling to get out of bed. Her husband's business was failing. She, lost her job. They were in foreclosure of their home, like massive. So she'd gotten through all this and built up a whole business. And years later, she finds herself there again, like towards the beginning of the pandemic. And again, everything's falling away. But anyway, there's this research that backs this up, which is crazy. But when you wake up in the morning, and this is such a simple thing that you can do that costs nothing and it takes 5 seconds, you high five yourself in the mirror and you look yourself in the eyes when you do it. And it was crazy. One of the studies that showed it was actually on NBA basketball teams. And they did a research to see which the teams that high-fived each other the most in the preseason had better outcomes in the regular season for winning. For the number of wins that they had. But there was also more that supported when it came to high-fiving. And what happens, and it's a celebration, but what you're doing in the mirror is a celebration of self. And it's like reinforcing in its own way. And she did a study before she wrote the book with all these people that participated. And people experiencing the first time they did it, just crying in that moment. And the very first time that I did it, and I was literally listening to her podcast because I do in the morning, and I did kind of tear up a little bit. And she doesn't even say you need to say anything, but I found myself in that moment going, hey, you're doing a great job. Like, I see you and I see how hard you're trying. And I want you to know, like, right now in this moment, you're enough. And even that, like, I feel emotion just now in that moment, remembering what that felt like. So that's one thing that came to my mind for like, that doesn't cost you anything and it takes so little time and it's wild. I would just challenge anybody listening to just try it for a week. First thing when you wake up in the morning and you go to the bathroom to brush your teeth or pee or whatever, stop, look yourself in the eyes and high five yourself. Just see what it feels like after a week.
That's cool.
Yeah. I like that. And I think it makes a lot of sense because self-compassion is a really difficult thing to cultivate. And that is, it's such a simple thing, like you said, but look how profound, because we're starving ourselves of self-compassion and we're just critical assholes in our head.
Oh my gosh.
So this like moment of just like seeing yourself, that's really cool.
Yeah.
It reminds me of this study that got brought up on Andrew Huberman's podcast where he's talking about gratitude practices,
Mm-hmm.
right? How that gratitude practices can seem a little bit like fluffy on the outside, but they're good. But they actually did studies where they compared groups that did like basically journaling, where they're basically listing all the stuff that they're grateful for. And they had another group where the participants received gratitude from someone else. Mm-hmm. And it's actually the receiving of the gratitude is what caused like a whole bunch of really solid like biological changes in like reductions in cortisol and increases in oxytocin and all these good chemicals. And so like it totally makes sense that if you're on a team and people are like, hey, good job, and they're giving you a high five, like it's probably like really going into those mechanisms and getting you.
Yeah, I'm going to be starting having some requirements for my clients that come to see me. And one of them is for them to have a gratitude practice and to go on walks outside. And gratitude retrains your brain. Our brain is wired to be more negative because if we are hunter-gatherers.
Watch out for that over there in the bushes.
If we're hunter-gatherers, we have to be on edge. It's all about risk. It's all about what's going to happen. And that's part of surviving. And we don't have the same risk now, but that's still how our brains are wired. So to practice gratitude and actually say, yeah, I'm noticing that like, instead of disregarding this positive thing, I'm going to intentionally wire my brain to look for it, notice it. That helps your brain then strengthen that pathway.
Yes.
Right. And it's so simple and it's so important. It's really fun because we do it with our kids. And now Oakley, who's 12, like he'll instigate it or he'll be like, well, we didn't do it yesterday, so we have to do 5 today.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
And
so
it's gratitude. Do you know what time it is? It's gratitude time.
Yes.
And it's adorable. And I love that it's something that has been woven into our family culture too. But yeah, it's not fluff. This is a mindfulness practice that has been research-based. There is another person who talks about gratitude, and he talks about the double effect, which means now share your gratitude with someone. Now tell someone else about it, because the act of telling it, you're reliving it. Just like you talking about putting your hand on the mirror, you relived the experience. So instead of the end of the day, reliving and talking about, this crappy thing happened and this stressed me out, like what would it look like to highlight the good? And I try to really tell my clients, it doesn't need to be big. It doesn't need to be like you won the lottery.
Right.
Tell me you saw blue sky today. Did that make you feel good? Did someone smile at you? Like, it's even better when you have to search for it like that, because that is a deeper training ground.
Right.
And there's certainly days where it feels hard, but it is still possible. And you still should try. So I think it's a huge thing that can help our brain and help us be healthier.
I think that's incredible.
That being said, so you said that you and your family have a gratitude practice. What does that look like? How do you go about doing that? At
dinner time, or sometimes if we forget and we're all snuggled in bed and watching a movie or something, it's like, wait, it's gratitude time. We got to do our gratitudes. And we picked doing 3. It was funny because there was a family member who visited and he was like, 3? We have to do more than 1. And then the next night it was gratitude time again. And they were like, what? I don't have any more. Like, it was so interesting to see the untrained brain not be able to find them But yeah, for me, it oftentimes is I got to see some blue sky, or I really try to keep it simple. I could even say things today already. In fact, we should challenge ourselves to come up with some. Today, I've been practicing Andrew Huberman's Looking at the Sun in the morning.
I love that.
And I had a couple days this week where I totally did and I felt good. And then yesterday I didn't. And I felt that too. So I really made sure to have that intention. It did feel good. And the sun was really out. It wasn't hiding behind the clouds.
It was lovely.
Perfect sun-gazing day. My daughter is just hilarious. So she just makes me laugh no matter what she does. And right now she has all kinds of real silly idiosyncrasies and things that she's got going on. She loves counting down from 5 and saying blast off. So that's a lot of our day.
That's so cute, which is also a Mel Robbins thing, the 5-second rule, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, that makes you go and do things you don't want to do. So that's wild that you would say that.
My daughter has hacked it.
Oh my gosh. She really is.
All the time.
That's crazy.
So that makes me smile and makes me laugh. And then I get to be here having conversations that just light me up. And that's exciting for me.
That's what I would say too.
Right? So like make that a goal of yours to be practicing that.
I would say it too. I'm grateful for conversations like this. I am extroverted and connection is really my why, and having conversations that stimulate me mentally, but also like stimulate my heart and put me in my feels. And, that's something that I have a lot of gratitude for right now in this moment. Cause this will literally blast me off for the rest of the day, which I was already feeling pretty blasted off because I also went out in the sunshine this morning, and birds, I have so many birds I can hear in the back. So nice. And I actually learned a few weeks ago that there was a study that showed that listening to just a few minutes of birdsong can boost your mood for up to 8 hours.
Wow.
And I didn't realize, because I'm like, well, that makes sense, because when I can start my day on my patio, it's not just about being outside, but I love the birds.
Just being around nature.
It's just so, and we've talked a lot about, the body and the brain and the connection, and how much physically, taking care of our physical well-being too will impact our mental health. And I think sometimes when you're feeling really kind of stuck mentally, and like it feels like these things aren't, it's just not helping because you're so like in this whole, like I was able, when I got back into a workout routine last year, the number one reason I was working out was I was like, okay, this is for my mental health. This isn't for the scale or how my clothes are fitting or like lifting more weight. And it was amazing to me how that helped me move. Because even if I didn't go to the gym and lift, I was like, okay, no, I'm going for a walk. And that helped boost me enough mentally to be able to find more weight in the other things that I already knew contribute to my mental health. But, or when I'm eating well, when I'm taking care of my my gut microbiome, because I was in dysbiosis last year and everything was out of whack, and the way I was feeling physically just made my mental health go.
What is that?
So gut dysbiosis is whenever the good and bad bacteria in your gut is out of balance.
Gotcha.
And so I had been experiencing things for over a year, but it was so slowly progressive. I wasn't aware. It was my energy had, very slowly tanked to the point where I was like, I needed a 2-hour nap after a 3-mile walk, and I thought that it was really just my mental health, but no, everything had been declining physically for long enough that my mental health then just started to follow it. So I just thought I was just really depressed, and I really was in a way, but it started with my physical health.
That's a great example of the brain-body connection.
Yeah.
And gut health, I mean, it's considered our second brain. And we're still learning more about what that really means. But when you think of like little kids, they're more in tune to their bodies. So when they are nervous, they often get a tummy ache. They're getting a tummy ache because cortisol is being produced in their gut when they're having anxiety. And what's going on in our gut biome can totally determine what's going on with health. I take a mood probiotic, and I recommend it that everyone really try doing that and really take notice about how you're feeling. Because I think that with the typical American diet, that's something that we need to pay attention to. It's something I need to do better. It is not my forte,
same.
Eating the right things. I haven't talked about this yet with hardly anyone, so it's funny that I'm going to bring it up now. But I have a hiatal hernia I recently learned about, and then that has triggered a lot of gut issues and exhaustion. That was a lot of confusion. Like in the last 6 months, doctors thought I had Hodgkin's lymphoma, diabetes, and something like crazy things, right?
Right.
And so finally things have been figured out. But the weirdest part of what's happening is if I'm not taking care of myself and I'm eating, like we went over to Boston to visit a college friend, and like the food's good and
you're on vacation, so you like really have no restraint. It's like every meal is whatever I want.
And I had a vasovagal response, and that had happened other times, and now I'm realizing why. When you have a kind of hernia, it can aggravate your vagus nerve, and that is the nerve that's running longest through your body and can impact that flooded response.
Right.
So there have been times where I'm not having any anxiety. I'm chilling out, and all of a sudden I'm white as a sheet. My heart rate's going crazy. I'm sweating. I feel like I'm going to vomit.
Such a terrible feeling.
But I'm like, oh, I don't want to puke at my friend's house. I'm not, there's no anxiety in my brain.
Man.
Like one time it happened when I was taking a bath, and I was like, I guess I should unplug the tub so I don't drown if I faint.
Oh my God.
Like that was the thought in my head. It wasn't it was like, this is unpleasant, and I guess I should call my husband and not drown. But there's no anxiety there, but it's been a real like this is an example, and yours too, of where that brain-body connection does take time to navigate. Or I've had clients where a large part of their anxiety was actually a hormonal imbalance that they got figured out. So what you feel emotionally, we should pay attention to what's going on in your body as well. And most, like I would say, rule some things out.
Yeah. Being able to have that support and seeing, having somebody that you can see to talk to about your mental health, but also holistic health and nutritionist. And even then, supplements, which is something we talk about a lot here, with vitamin D and B12 and the roles those play in your mood and, in your body. And those are big as well. So being able to, do something like it's, I think in one way, I want people to feel encouraged from this conversation and knowing that like with simple tricks, like we talked about, like journaling and the high five habit, or, a good nutritional supplement like vitamin D and B12, and also make sure you're taking your vitamin D with fat because it's fat soluble vitamin. So I got to put that in there, or just eating well. Like there are things, and movement, go for a walk. There are things that you can start doing right now to start shifting that balance. And, just letting it be like, this is the first, like, this is the next right step to like get going in the right direction. And doing one or two of these small things could end up really being the thing that gives you the strength and the courage
for the next
to do the next right step. And it's just one at a time. I think we get so overwhelmed with this idea of like, I'm here and I have so far to go. Like, how could I ever?
And that comparison, right? Of like, oh, I'm failing all the, and I'm not immune to it. I think I'm much better at catching it. So it was actually funny when I was reading over the podcast questions, and there was a question about what I do for self-care. Part of me was like, now I have to admit that I need to brush up on my self-care. But the act of writing it through, I'm like, I'm doing a damn good job, actually.
Right.
Like, no, I am doing okay. Yeah, there's areas that I want to focus on and improve on, or doesn't come as naturally to me.
Right.
But like, no, you do have a solid self-care practice.
Right.
And I don't know. I think that the more we can be curious about how to add to that is in little ways that are doable can make a big difference, just like you're saying.
Right. And the mindset of it's a continual journey, right?
Yes.
It's not one day we arrive, or Keilani is arrived because she is a therapist and she does these things and she has a podcast. It's like, even like you just said, you're like, oh, you kind of forget how far you've come, right? When you're climbing the mountain, it's so easy to forget to look back and be like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
I came really far. Yeah. Like, I see how high that summit is, but it's like really in the journey of life, like it's always going. You never just really arrive.
And I think that's a reminder too, so that you're not feeling that comparison. Like, guess what? We're all feeling that way.
All of us.
I guess that's part of what there's a couple key elements that I love about my job. One of them is I get to lift the veil and say, and everyone else thinks and feels a lot of that too. You're not alone. Yeah. Let me tell you, like, if you're human, you've had those thoughts. If you're human, you will have this experience at some point in your life, whether grief, loss, heartache, just being devastated. I'm sorry, but it will happen. And that makes you just as normal as the rest of us. Thank you. Welcome to the joint. Yeah.
So glad
you're part of the team.
Right.
And also being the cheerleader as they're on that climb up the mountain. God, it's so fun to be like, do you realize that a year ago you wouldn't have been able to do that? That's so freaking cool.
Pretty incredible.
Right? Like to give them that opportunity to see that, because I see it. And it's a beautiful thing that that therapy can provide when you find the right fit.
Yeah.
I love it.
Have you guys ever heard of the Kaizen method? So it's a philosophy. It was actually something that got created over in Japan. Really, I don't know the date, and it was basically a car company where the whole purpose of it was like, we just have to get 1% better every day. Right? If you can just get 1% better every day, and there's actually a map or like a graph that shows the progress that you can make, and it's like if you improve 1% every day, it's like 42 times the difference over the course of a year, which is absolutely incredible.
Well, there was actually a coach for the British men's cycling team who did a similar approach to that, because they had like lost for years and years and years and years and years. And so this guy came on as the coach, and it was 1% better. It was like, fine tuning their equipment. So it was just like a tiny bit lighter. It was about their health and like keeping them, from being sick quite as long. And like, it literally was these tiny, tiny little things over a period of time that then they finally got their first world championship or whatever as the men's cycling team in it. But it's what Tim Ferriss says. He's like, everybody just kind of thinks 10x effort equals 10x results. Yeah. But it's really small incremental changes over time that add up to these massive differences. But I think part of what this conversation we're having right now is about, it's about noticing and celebrating the smallness in those steps, because it feels so little that you and it's gradual enough at times. Like you said, we were talking about earlier, like, oh, you just want that breakthrough, like that moment of like, and it hits you. And like, those are wonderful. And hopefully people will have those as well. But like, it's not better than all of these tiny little things that you're doing throughout your day and your week that add up.
A lot of, I think that's the majority of healing. You get these pockets of breakthroughs, little, maybe like 10%, but a lot of it looks kind of boring.
Yeah.
It's like
a lot of healing. Yeah.
It's like growing a garden,
Yeah.
Like, so I'm planting a garden in my backyard,
mine.
and it's a lot of work. And it's like, hey, why am I doing this? Every year is like, why am I doing this? But like seeing those little plants sprout up, it takes a long time, but if just sticking with it and like getting the fruit at the end of it is so worth it.
Gardening at a time when, as you were describing, like all the things going on with Mel Robbins, when it rains, it pours. There was a time in my life when I was going through a divorce, refinancing my house, changing careers, trying to start a business, like navigating just all of these things at once. And I had my garden. And if I nurtured my garden, things worked. Things weren't working as smoothly in my life, but in my garden, I could put time here and I would get some kind of a payoff. I could nurture something and it would respond appropriately.
I love that.
It felt so good.
Yeah. Right. And you were in nature. And see, when I was going through all this stuff with my divorce and like separation from my faith, and I was in a new state away from my family, and there was so much for me, it was the gym, because that was one place I could go, I could focus on this one thing, and I could see results and benefit and feel them. And you're like growing actual plants, but you're also outside in nature and you're in the dirt and you're connected. And it's amazing how
I'm like becoming my mother is really what it's happening before my eyes.
Oh my gosh. I love it. Congrats, Mom. She seems like a great human, so you're probably pretty great too. Was there anything else that you wanted to touch on, Derek?
I guess really the last thing that we ask all our guests is like, if there's someone that's in a situation of like, I don't know if I should go to therapy, or they're in a situation where like, I want to work on my mental health. What's one piece of advice that you'd give to them?
Yeah. It doesn't have to be scary. I think if you're wanting to pursue therapy, schedule free phone consultations with 2 or 3 people. And I tell the people that I have consults with, you're interviewing me too. Like, I want you to feel like you have a good fit. And I want to feel like I'm going to be able to work with someone that's in my wheelhouse of expertise in the things that light me up and I'm passionate about. And have a few of those and really just pay attention, like, who do you feel comfortable with and who do you vibe with? And you get to have a say in that. You are free to change your mind. If you have a couple sessions and you decide if someone came to me and they had a couple sessions and they said, like, I don't know that this is the right fit for me, do you have someone else? I would be happy to refer them. Like, I'm just wanting you to feel like you have someone that you can work with. And I want to facilitate that, whether that's with me or with someone else. I hope that that's the perspective other therapists have. They should. And, it's really about you stepping in the door and feeling okay, like with the person that you're going to be working with, I think is a good first step. But it doesn't have to feel big and scary. I try to meet my clients where they're at, but I also require you to challenge yourself. I want to work with people who are ready to do the work. I don't want to convince you to do things that are good for you. If you want to be here and you're in my office, you're already telling me and committing to doing the work. Yeah. So that's the type of client that I want to work with. And if I can be clear in communicating that, hopefully they can make that decision about what authentically feels good for them. But I love, it was actually just recently I was reading it was another therapist. He said he requires in the consult, he tells them start going on walks 2 times a day and start practicing gratitude, before he even sees them. And I love that as well. Like, if you are considering going to therapy, so the momentum, often people are already taking steps before that first appointment. And those would be 2 really good first steps to do on your own.
Yeah. I love that. I've loved this conversation so much today. And I think for people that are listening, that we tend to talk more about our physical health. Like, I hope that they get that this is not really a departure from that. This is more so a completion.
Your brain is a part of your body.
It 100% is. And, I would just challenge anyone listening today to pick 2 of the things that Keilani and we have talked about to benefit your mental health and your physical health, and just watch and see how they lead to and support one another, and how that begins to impact your overall health and this brain-body, connection. So thank you so much, Keilani, for taking the time to talk with us today. And you can find Keilani on her podcast with James Timmons on Delightfully Dysfunctional on pretty much anywhere podcasts.
Yes, it's available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever podcasts are found. We're on Instagram, TikTok, all that good stuff. And then my therapy practice is Evolve Counseling. I also do life coaching and do public speaking for businesses and trainings as well. So you can find me on, Facebook, Instagram, email me. I'm around.
Fantastic.
Well, we're glad that you've been around today.
It's been amazing having you on the show.
Thank you. It's been wonderful.
Really? Yeah. Thanks so much, Keilani.
Yes.